press. Sunday morning, face the nation. You've been out.
All right, y'all, welcome back to Anti-War Radio, Chaos 92.7 FM in Austin, Texas. Our first guest today is Victor Navasky. He's the publisher emeritus at The Nation magazine. He is the chairman of the Columbia Journalism Review. And I'm not sure if he's the president or the CEO of the Institute of Expertology, but I guess we'll find out. Welcome to the show, Victor.
Thanks. I'm not sure either.
Oh, you're not sure either. You're one or the other. Is that it?
I'm one or the other.
He's all right. So Victor Navasky, he's the president or CEO of the Institute of Expertology, and I guess being the publisher emeritus at The Nation, you sound like quite an expert yourself there.
Well, Chris Cerf and I, who did this book, Mission Accomplished, we founded the Institute of Expertology 25 years ago, and we did a study of experts from every field from the beginning of time, and we couldn't find one who was right. And so people said, who are you to say the experts are right or wrong? If experts are all wrong, maybe you're wrong. And our view is we're not experts. We're meta-experts. We're expertologists. We study the experts. So there it is.
I see. So you get to exclude yourself from the category. That's
right.
And, okay, so now that first book, that was called The Expert Speak, the definitive compendium of misinformation. And I think I remember when that came out. You guys were the ones who proved that the experts are no more right than the average goofball's chance on the street?
No, the average goofball is much better than the experts. And he's not a goofball either. You know, in this new book that we've done, people have accused us of being partisan because we point out that both Hillary Clinton and McCain each thought this war would be over in a matter of months. Hillary voted to authorize it. McCain, who says he opposed it from the beginning, actually said they're going to greet us as liberators.
We will be welcomed as liberators.
It was easy. We were greeted with as liberators.
And people said, but you don't have anything about the other candidate, Barack Obama, who actually was against the war from the start. And
I don't oppose war in all circumstances, and when I look out over this crowd today, I know there is no shortage of patriots or patriotism. What I do oppose is a dumb war.
Us rushing headlong into a war unilaterally was a mistake and may still be a mistake. If it has happened, then at that point what the debate's really going to be about is what's our long-term commitment there? How much is it going to cost? What does it mean for us to rebuild Iraq? How do we stabilize and make sure that this country doesn't splinter into factions between the Shias and the Kurds and the Sunnis?
I said, yeah, but that's because everyone agrees he had no experience, or he wasn't an expert, so he's excluded from our study.
Right. And Ron Paul, now he was right from the beginning, too, only he's some sort of political ideologue, and they taint your sample, too, right?
That's right. We concede that there are some people who got it right, but they tend to be extremists on the left or the right or the libertarians, and so we excluded them from our study, too, because they would pollute our sample.
I see. And I guess, the guys at Knight Ridder newspapers, they don't count. It's the the people who got it all wrong are the true experts here in our society.
Well, but it's not just politicians, although obviously Bush and Cheney, and they're at the center of our study, but scholars like the scholar Fuad Ajami, who is from the Johns Hopkins Political Science faculty, or the scholar Kenan Makia, who's one of the world's leading Islamicists. They had disputes among themselves, but their disputes were over things like, Ajami said, we would be greeted with kites and boom boxes. And Kenan Makia said, no, we would be greeted with kisses and flowers. So that was the nature of their difference.
Yeah, that was a very serious debate. I remember being very caught up in that, in 2002 there. And now you also point out that the fact that the neocons and the liberal hawks agreed with each other should have been our first clue that they were all wrong.
Well, it's not, but it's not just, it's the press itself, and Bill O'Reilly, of course, who said it would be over in a matter of weeks, and not just the conservative press. Richard Cohen, who's a liberal columnist for the Washington Post, wrote after Colin Powell gave his speech at the UN, he said now that he's given that speech, no one can doubt that Saddam Hussein has nuclear weapons. And he said, only a fool or possibly a Frenchman could think otherwise.
Now, Victor, here, I want to play this clip. I stole some audio from Norman Solomon's film War Made Easy.
Great.
And this is a little medley of, well, basically what the press thought of the experts, the pundits and the reporters and experts thought of Colin Powell's great speech there.
Trust me.
Did Colin Powell close the deal today in your mind for anyone who has yet objectively to make up their mind?
I think for anybody who analyzes the situation, he has closed the deal.
This irrefutable, undeniable, incontrovertible evidence today, Colin Powell brilliantly delivered that smoking gun today. Colin Powell is outstanding today. I mean, it was lockstep. It was so compelling. I don't see how anybody at this point cannot support this effort.
He made a wonderful presentation. I thought he made a great case for the purpose of disarmament. It was devastating. I mean, and overwhelming abundance of the evidence. Point after point after point. He just flooded the terrain with data.
It's the end of the argument phase. America has made its case.
The Powell speech has moved the ball.
All right, so there you go. That's the expert speaking on the Colin Powell speech.
That's you got them, and you got them in their own voices.
You know, it was funny. I saw one of the quotes that you use of George W. Bush. We had put on a bumper sticker, which was that one of the hardest parts of my job is to connect the war in Iraq to the war on terrorism.
You know, one of the hardest parts of my job is to connect Iraq to the war on terror. You know, one of the hardest parts of my job is to connect Iraq to the war on terror.
Yes, and he managed to do it. But, you know, the thing is, it's just so that nobody holds these folks to account. That's why we, in the last couple of days over Tom Dispatch, we took McCain's statements because he is so insistent that from the beginning he was opposed to this war. And I could, if you want, I could go down and give you his answers to some of the key questions that were asked. And, you know, they asked how American troops would be greeted. On March 20th, he said, I believe the Iraqi people will greet us as liberators. Did Saddam Hussein have a nuclear program that that posed an imminent threat to the United States? On October 10th, 2002, he said, Saddam Hussein is on a crash course to construct a nuclear weapon. Of course, it turned out not to be true. Will the war in Iraq be long or short? On March 23rd, he said, this conflict is going to be relatively short. How is the war going? In September of 2003, he said, and this is from a guy who describes himself now as the war's greatest critic. On September of 2003, he said, I would argue that the next 3 to 6 months will be critical. And then he said in October, when you asked how the war was going 2 months after that, he said, I think the initial phases of the war were so spectacularly successful that it took us all by surprise.
The success will be fairly easy.
I believe that we can win an overwhelming victory in a very short period of time.
Easy. It was easy.
I knew it was probably going to be long and hard and tough, and those that voted for it and thought that somehow it was going to be some kind of an easy task, then I'm sorry they were mistaken. Maybe they didn't know what they were voting for.
And then in the following year, is this war really necessary? He said, only the most deluded of us could doubt the necessity of the war. So it just, you know.
Yeah, and by the way, everybody can find this article at TomDispatch.com. We're also running it today at antiwar.com. McCain Misspeaks by Christopher Cerf, Victor S. Navasky, and Tom Engelhardt. It's at antiwar.com/Engelhardt. And, of course, you also single McCain out here for all of his propaganda about the surge working. This has been a major turning point in these past 6 months.
Yes.
Isn't your book obsolete now that the surge has worked?
Well, I'm glad you asked. We have a lot of respect for the turning point thesis, and so we go back in time and we show that all of the people who talked about the turning point way back from 2002, you know, I can jump in at any point here. Douglas Feith in July of 2003 said, this month will be a political turning point. On November 6, 2003, President Bush said, "We've reached another great turning point.